All right, welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving into something that literally surrounds us, governs our daily lives, and yet, often feels incredibly complicated. We're talking about the economy. And I don't want you to think of the economy as some dry, abstract mathematical concept from a textbook. Think of it as a living, breathing machine. It's a vast, interconnected system that you and I participate in every single day, whether we're buying our morning coffee or clocking in for a shift at work. So today, we're going to break down exactly what this machine is and how its main gears fit together.
Here's the game plan for today. We'll start with the microeconomic, define the system as a whole, and then break down the three big ones: the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary sector. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The microeconomics. Sometimes to understand a massive concept like global economics, we kind of have to tune out all the confusing noise and zoom way in. We need to look at pure, simple transactions. Imagine a town where there are only two things, a factory and a customer named Mr. A. But here's the catch. Mr. A also happens to be an employee at that exact same factory. It's just one firm and one person. Super simple, right?
Well, this setup brilliantly illustrates the continuous circular loop of literally any economic system. Just watch how this flows. Step 1, Mr. A goes to work at the factory. Step 2, in exchange for his hard work, the factory pays him a salary. Step 3, Mr. A takes his hard-earned money and buys goods produced by the factory. And finally, Step 4, the factory earns that money back, which allows them to keep the lights on and keep operating. You work, you earn, you spend that money on goods, and the producer gets paid. And the whole cycle just repeats itself. Boom.
Section 2, defining the system. Now that we've seen how perfectly this works on a micro scale with just our guy, Mr. A, let's scale things up and actually define the overarching system that governs millions of these transactions happening all at once.
Formally speaking, an economy is just a framework or a system where people and organizations produce, distribute, and consume goods and services. And why do they do all this? To earn a living. At its core, an economy is just the way people spend money and the way they make money, whether that's in a tiny, one-factory town or across an entire nation.
But to make this massive machine run, to actually create wealth and give people what they need, it relies heavily on three foundational resources. First, you need land. You literally have to have a place to put your factory or farm. Second, you need labor, like Mr. A, to actually do the work. And third, you need capital, the funds and the machinery to get the whole thing off the ground.
So here is the real takeaway. An economy actually has two main functions, and they are completely codependent. On one hand, its job is to produce goods and services to satisfy what we all want. On the other hand, its job is to provide employment and income opportunities. Think about it. You simply cannot produce goods without giving people jobs, and those people need the income from those jobs to buy the goods. It's the ultimate catch-22, or rather, two sides of the exact same coin.
Section 3, the primary sector. Let's move on and see how this builds into the broader world. If we look at the nature of all these economic activities, we can categorize every job out there into three distinct sectors. Let's start right at the base of the chain, with nature itself.
Essentially, every job you can think of generally falls into one of these three huge buckets: the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the tertiary or service sector. Let's crack open that first one. The primary sector is literally the starting block for everything in our economy. This sector covers activities that are based directly on exploiting natural resources. We're talking land, water, forests, and minerals. This is where humans cooperate with nature to yield raw natural products, forming the absolute base for everything else we're ever going to produce.
To give you some concrete examples, we are looking at agriculture, forestry, raising cattle and animal husbandry, fishing, and mining or quarrying. Notice the pattern? Every single one of these involves directly extracting resources straight from the earth. And because of the unique nature of this work, there's actually a specific color-coded term for it. People engaged in these primary sector activities are called red-collar workers. This name is a nod to the rugged outdoor nature of their work, out in the sun, getting their hands dirty with the natural environment. For instance, look at the images we have here. On the left, we've got a farmer cultivating a field, working the land to produce crops. Next to him, a milkman milking a cow, raising livestock to produce food. Both are primary producers. They are extracting nature's yield to kickstart this entire economic cycle.
Which brings us to Section 4, the secondary sector. Because let's be honest, we don't just eat raw wheat straight from the field or wear unspun cotton, right?
That raw stuff has to be transformed, and that is exactly what the secondary sector is all about. It takes those raw materials that were just produced in the primary sector and turns them into something else through manufacturing and industry. Because it's so heavily tied to factories, you'll widely hear this referred to as the industrial sector.
The cause and effect here is just fascinating. You take cotton fibers straight from the plant in the primary sector, and in the secondary sector you spin yarn and weave cloth. You take raw wheat and you mill it into flour to bake bread. You take sugar and process it into sugar. And hey, this manufacturing doesn't have to be in a massive, sprawling factory. It could happen in a small workshop or even right in someone's home.
Now, you're probably familiar with this next term. Just like we had red-collar workers out in the fields, folks engaged in secondary activities are called blue-collar workers. This terminology highlights the intense, physical, manual labor required to actually manufacture and assemble these finished goods.
Check this out. Here we see that transformation in action. We've got a baker actively transforming flour into ready-to-sell biscuits, and a weaver turning raw fibers into usable cloth. They are the essential middle step, taking nature's raw ingredients and turning them into the physical items we actually consume.
Finally, Section 5, the tertiary sector. Because a finished box of biscuits sitting in a bakery or a roll of cloth sitting on a loom isn't going to help a customer miles away. Finished goods need logistics, and businesses need support.
The word tertiary literally means third in order, but it's a completely different beast. What makes the tertiary sector entirely unique is that it does not produce physical goods like the first two sectors. Instead, it provides the support services those sectors desperately need. That's why almost everyone just calls it the service sector.
Think about it like this. Goods produced in a factory need trucks or trains to transport them. They need warehouses for storage. Businesses need telephones to communicate, they need bank loans to buy equipment, and they need insurance to protect it all. Transport, communication, banking, health, education, these services act as the vital connective tissue that allows the whole economic machine to function.
And that brings us to our final classification. Workers who are engaged in these tertiary or service sector jobs are known as white-collar workers. They aren't extracting raw materials or running heavy manufacturing equipment. They are providing the business, administrative, and essential services that keep modern society humming along. Just look at the insane scale of this sector. On one hand, you have a doctor providing intimate, personal health care, a vital service. On the other hand, you have the sheer massive infrastructure of the Indian Railways, transporting millions of people and manufactured goods across a continent. Totally different jobs, but both are tertiary producers providing a service rather than a physical object.
So we've built this whole thing up, right? From a simple transaction between Mr. A and his factory, all the way to a global system of red, blue, and white-collar workers completely relying on each other. You literally can't have factories without raw materials from the earth, and you can't have finished goods without the transport and banks to support them. So I want to leave you with this. Think about your own daily life, or the jobs of your family members. Are you a red, blue, or white-collar worker? And the next time you tack your car to buy something, ask yourself, which sector's gears are you turning in this grand economic machine? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning how the world around you works.